My name is Ezra, and at 32 years old, I never expected to be at war with my own family over money. When Mom announced the Hawaii vacation, flights cost $1,980 each. Her eyes challenged me. "If you cannot afford it, stay behind," she said dismissively. I nodded, hiding my panic. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed with alerts. Someone had used my credit card for 4 business class tickets, totaling $7,920. My hands trembled as I opened the app, hit Dispute All, and locked the account. Dad showed up at my door 30 minutes later. Before we dive into what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who crossed your boundaries. Trust me, what happened next changed everything. Growing up, I never fully realized how complicated my family's relationship with money was. As a graphic designer making just under $60,000 annually in Boston, I lived comfortably, but modestly. My one-bedroom apartment was nothing fancy, but it was all mine, decorated with my own artwork and secondhand furniture I had lovingly restored. I drove a 10-year-old Honda that still ran perfectly. My lifestyle reflected my income, reasonable, sustainable, and within my means. My parents, however, lived in a different universe entirely. Dad made his fortune in commercial real estate development, while Mom managed their social calendar with military precision. Their 5-bedroom house in Brookline featured an indoor pool and a 3-car garage housing vehicles worth more than my annual salary. My sister Natalie, 3 years younger than me, worked as a marketing executive for a luxury brand and had embraced our parents' lifestyle wholeheartedly. Then there was my younger brother Jason, the golden child of the family, who had followed Dad into real estate and was already making 6 figures by 26. "When are you going to get a real job?" Mom would ask during Sunday dinners, serving food on china that cost more than my rent. "Graphic design is fine as a hobby, but surely you want more security." Dad would nod in agreement. "I have connections at Hartman Development. One call and you could start Monday." These conversations became ritualistic, and I learned to deflect with humor or change the subject. What they never understood was that I loved my work creating visual stories for clients who appreciated my talents. The freedom to control my projects and work with diverse businesses gave me a satisfaction I knew corporate life never would. Our annual family vacations had always been points of tension. Since childhood, these trips were mandatory attendance events, where appearance mattered more than enjoyment. As kids, we were paraded around resorts in coordinating outfits for photos that would later appear on Mom's carefully curated social media. As adults, the expectation remained that we would join regardless of work commitments or financial situations. Last year's trip to the Amalfi Coast had stretched my budget to breaking point. I had to dip into my emergency savings to cover the family rate Mom had negotiated for our hotel, which was still outrageously expensive. When I suggested staying somewhere more affordable nearby, the look of horror on Mom's face ended that conversation before it began. "We stay together as a family, Ezra," she had said firmly. "What would people think if you were at some budget hotel while we were at La Serena?" The unspoken family rule was clear: keep up appearances at all costs. The problem was their costs, and my costs were calculated from vastly different financial realities. Things had gotten even tighter for me recently. 3 months ago, my biggest client, a local brewery, whose branding and packaging I had designed, was bought out by a national corporation who brought in their own design team. That single change had cut my income by nearly 20%. I had been picking up smaller jobs to compensate, but my financial cushion was thinner than ever. When Mom announced this year's vacation would be to Hawaii, my stomach sank. I had always wanted to visit the islands, but the timing couldn't have been worse. Still, the tradition held such weight in our family that missing it would be treated as a personal affront and a rejection of family itself, rather than simply a financial decision. The Morrisons went last year and said it was absolutely transformative. Mom had gushed on our family group chat. Diane said the Fairmont Orchid is the only place to stay on the Big Island. "I have already started looking at booking our rooms." Natalie immediately responded with flame emojis, and yes, Been wanting to go forever, Jason chimed in with. Sounds good to me. Clear my schedule for those dates. I had waited a full day before responding with a non-committal. Sounds amazing, while my mind raced with calculations of how I could possibly afford this trip without going into debt. The truth I could never admit to them was that I was barely staying afloat financially. My rent had increased by $300 when my lease renewed. Medical bills from a minor emergency room visit earlier in the year had eaten into my savings. And the constant pressure to appear as successful as my siblings meant spending money I didn't have on clothes and dinners I couldn't afford whenever we got together. This was the backdrop against which the Hawaii vacation planning began, a powder keg of unspoken financial strain and family expectations just waiting for a spark. The family meeting about the Hawaii vacation took place at my parents' house on a Sunday afternoon in March. Mom had prepared an elaborate spread of appetizers that probably cost more than I would spend on groceries for a week. The dining room table was covered with travel brochures, printed itineraries, and her iPad open to a luxury travel website. I thought it would be nice to plan this together, Mom said, though it was immediately clear that most decisions had already been made. We will be going for 10 days in June. The weather should be perfect. Dad sat quietly at the head of the table, occasionally nodding as Mom spoke, but otherwise scrolling through emails on his phone. This was his usual approach, silent endorsement of Mom's plans, while maintaining plausible deniability if anything went wrong. I've been looking at activities, Natalie chimed in, sliding a glossy brochure toward me. There is a private helicopter tour of the volcanoes that looks amazing, and I thought we could do a chartered sailing trip around the coast. I glanced at the prices listed in small print at the bottom of the page and felt my chest tighten. The helicopter tour alone was $500 per person. Jason lounged in his chair, scrolling through his own phone. Whatever works. Just make sure there is good golfing. Thomas Wilkins said the course at Mauna Kea is world-class. I have already made tea time reservations for you, and Mom assured him with a smile that never appeared when she addressed me. The conversation continued as they discussed restaurants requiring reservations months in advance and exclusive excursions available only to hotel guests. I remained mostly silent, occasionally nodding or making non-committal sounds of agreement. Finally, Mom turned her full attention to me. You have been awfully quiet, Ezra. Do you have any preferences for activities? All eyes turned to me, and I felt the familiar pressure to play my part in the family performance. Maybe some hiking. I have heard there are amazing trails that are free to access. The word free landed like a dead fish on the table. Mom's smile tightened. Well, yes, I suppose there are public hiking trails, but I was thinking more along the lines of the private guided nature tour. The guide is a local botanist who knows all the hidden spots tourists never see. That sounds great too, I said quickly, mentally, adding another few $100s to the growing total in my head. Then came the moment that would set everything in motion. Mom tapped on her iPad and looked up with a businesslike expression. Now about flights. I have found excellent options with only one connection through Los Angeles. The economy seats are $1,980 each, but I was thinking we should consider business class for such a long journey. Those are $3,500 each. My mouth went dry. Even the economy tickets would drain most of my remaining savings, and that was before considering the hotel meals and activities. Flights are $1,980 each. Mom repeated, looking directly at me now. If you cannot afford it, stay behind. But I would hate for you to miss the family vacation. The implied message was clear. Find a way to pay or be the one who ruins the family tradition. I should be fine, I lied, avoiding her gaze. Economy is good for me, though. Natalie rolled her eyes. Come on, Ezra. Business class makes such a difference on long flights. We all are doing it. Your sister is right, Mom said. It would be awkward for you to be sitting separately from the family. I will think about it, I said, which in my family was the acceptable way to say no, without causing an immediate confrontation. The meeting continued for another hour, with more activities and expenses piling onto the itinerary. By the time I left driving home in my aging Honda, while Natalie pulled away in her new Audi, the weight of the impending financial disaster sat heavy on my shoulders. 2 hours later, I was sitting at my desk, trying to work when my phone buzzed with a text message notification. Then, another, and another. When I checked, they were all from my credit card company, purchase authorization, airline tickets, $7,920. Confusion hit first. I hadn't purchased any tickets yet. Then came a sinking realization as more details appeared on my screen. 4 business-class tickets to Hawaii, purchased through the airline's website, departing on the exact dates of our family vacation. My hands shook as I opened my banking app to confirm what I already suspected. The purchase had indeed been charged to my card, a card I had never used for family expenses before. The only explanation was that someone in my family had somehow obtained my credit card information and used it without my knowledge or permission. I stared at the screen, disbelief turning to anger. The amount would max out my credit card and would take me years to pay off at my current income. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a well-intentioned gesture gone wrong. This was a deliberate decision to spend my money without my consent. With a clarity I had never felt before regarding my family, I tapped the dispute charge button and selected unauthorized transaction from the drop-down menu. I provided brief details. I did not make this purchase or authorize anyone to use my card, and submitted the claim. Then I used the app's security feature to lock my card, completely preventing any further charges. Almost immediately my phone rang. Dad's name and picture filled the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then Mom called. Then Natalie. Then the family group chat exploded with messages demanding I call immediately about an urgent situation. I turned my phone off completely and sat in the sudden silence of my apartment, heart racing, knowing that the comfortable illusion of family harmony had just been shattered forever. The pounding on my apartment door started at 7:30 the next morning. I had barely slept, turning my phone back on, only to see dozens of missed calls and increasingly angry text messages from my family. After reading enough to understand they were furious about the disputed charges, I turned it off again and tried unsuccessfully to sleep. When I looked through the peephole and saw my father standing in the hallway, his face flushed with anger, I considered pretending I wasn't home. But the confrontation was inevitable, and perhaps it was better to face it head on. I opened the door, but didn't step aside to let him in. "Dad, what the hell do you think you are doing?" he demanded, not bothering with a greeting. "Your mother is beside herself. The airline called this morning saying there was a problem with the payment for our tickets." "There is a problem," I said, finding a calm in my voice that surprised me. "Someone used my credit card without my permission to buy tickets I never agreed to purchase." Dad's face reddened further. "Do not be ridiculous. Your mother was simply handling the arrangements for everyone as she always does. She was trying to help you. By maxing out my credit card without asking me first, how is that helping?" It was understood at the meeting that we were all going, and all going business class, he said dismissively. "You were there. You did not object. I specifically said I would do economy if I went at all, and I never agreed to purchase tickets for anyone else. That would be impossible on my income, which you and Mom should know." Dad waved his hand as if swatting away an annoying insect. "This is how family vacations work, Ezra. We all contribute. Your brother paid for the rental cars. Natalie is handling some of the excursions. Your mother and I are paying for the hotel rooms, which are far more expensive than the flights. You are being selfish and childish." "Did Jason use Natalie's credit card without asking for the rental cars?" I asked. "Did Natalie use your card without permission for the excursions?" "Because someone used mine without my knowledge or consent for nearly $8,000 in airline tickets." Dad's expression shifted to the condescending look I had seen countless times growing up, the one that said, "I was being difficult for no good reason." "Your mother has everyone's credit card information for family expenses. This is nothing new." This statement hit me like a physical blow. She does not have mine. I never gave it to her. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face before he doubled down. You must have at some point. Regardless, this is a family matter that you are now making unnecessarily complicated. I expect you to call the credit card company immediately and withdraw the dispute. Before I could respond, Dad's phone rang. He answered immediately when he saw it was Mom calling. I am with him now. No, he is being stubborn about it. Hold on. He held out the phone to me. Your mother wants to speak with you. I shook my head. I am not withdrawing the dispute. The purchase was unauthorized. That is the truth. Dad pulled the phone back. He refuses to talk. I know. Yes, I will tell him. He ended the call and fixed me with a hard stare. Your mother is extremely upset. She says if you do not resolve this today, you should consider yourself uninvited from the vacation and all family gatherings until you apologize. My phone, which I had turned back on before answering the door, started buzzing continuously with notifications. Glancing at it, I could see the family group chat exploding again. I picked it up and read a few messages from Natalie. How could you embarrass Mom like this? The airline representative was so rude to her. Everyone is going to know about this now. Is that what you want? You need to fix this right now. Jason, surprisingly, had not contributed to the barrage. His silence was unusual. Typically, he would join in any family pile on especially one targeting me. I looked back up at my father who was watching me expectantly, clearly waiting for me to cave under the family pressure, as I always had before. Dad, I cannot and will not pay for those tickets. I do not know how Mom got my card information, but I never authorized that purchase. So that is it. You are choosing money over family. He said the word money as if it were distasteful, a concern that was beneath people of quality. I am choosing honest financial boundaries over being taken advantage of, I replied. There is a difference. Dad's expression hardened. You have 24 hours to fix this, Ezra. After that, do not expect to be welcomed at family functions. Your mother and I have always supported you, even with your career choices. This is how you repay that support. By humiliating your mother over a family vacation. He turned and walked away before I could respond, his footsteps heavy in the hallway. The door closing behind him felt surprisingly final, as if something fundamental had changed in our relationship. Alone in my apartment, I scrolled through more messages, each one increasingly accusatory and guilt-inducing. I started to feel the familiar doubts creep in. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe this was just how family finances worked in some households. Maybe I should just accept the charges to keep the peace. Then my phone rang with an unknown number. Thinking it might be the credit card company, I answered. Ezra, this is Taylor. It was my friend from college who now worked in banking. I hope you do not mind me calling out of the blue, but Natalie has been posting some vague but clearly angry stuff on social media about you, and I wanted to check if you were okay. The simple act of someone asking if I was okay, not demanding I fix something or accusing me of wrongdoing, brought a lump to my throat. I found myself telling Taylor everything, the words pouring out in a cathartic rush. When I finished, the silence on the line made me worry I had overshared, or that Taylor was judging me for making a big deal out of a family misunderstanding. Then came the response that would strengthen my resolve in the difficult days ahead. Ezra, that is not normal. What your family did is called fraud, and you were right to dispute it. Do not let them convince you otherwise. Over the next 3 days, the situation escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. My phone became a constant source of stress, with new tactics emerging hourly as my family worked through their playbook of emotional manipulation. Mom switched from anger to wounded martyrdom, sending messages like, "After all, I have sacrificed for this family. I never thought my own son would cause me such pain. And I have not been able to eat or sleep knowing you think I would deliberately hurt you." Dad took a more practical approach, offering what he probably considered a generous compromise. If it's really about the money, your mother and I will loan you the amount for the tickets. You can pay us back when you're in a better financial position. This offer missed the point so completely that I didn't even bother responding. This wasn't about needing a loan. It was about consent and boundaries. Natalie escalated her social media campaign, never mentioning me by name, but posting things like, "Family means supporting each other without keeping score," and "Some people don't appreciate what they have until it's gone." Friends who followed both of us were beginning to reach out asking if everything was okay between us. The most surprising development came from Jason, who had remained conspicuously quiet in the group chat. On the fourth day, after the confrontation with Dad, he sent me a private message. "This has gotten out of hand. Call me when you can talk privately." Before I could respond to Jason, Mom launched her nuclear option. She called my elderly grandmother her mother and told her a carefully edited version of events that cast me as refusing to participate in the family vacation out of selfishness, causing Mom terrible distress. Grandma Rose, concerned, called me immediately. "Ezra, darling, what is this about you? Upsetting your mother over the Hawaii trip. You know her heart isn't strong." My grandmother had always been the family peacekeeper, and using her this way felt especially underhanded. I tried to explain the situation without making Mom sound malicious, but it was difficult to explain credit card fraud to an 84-year-old woman who still wrote checks for everything. "I think there's been a misunderstanding about payment for the tickets, Grandma. I'm trying to sort it out." Well, family is everything, Ezra. Whatever it is, I'm sure it can be resolved with a little goodwill on both sides. After hanging up, I felt a renewed wave of doubt and guilt. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe disputing the charges was an extreme response to what my family saw as a normal arrangement. Then I received an unexpected call from Aunt Caroline, my father's sister, who had always been something of an outsider in the family herself after choosing a career in education over the family business. "Ezra, it's Aunt Caroline. I hope I'm not overstepping, but I've been hearing things from your dad about some disagreement over the family vacation." I braced myself for another lecture about family loyalty, but what she said next changed everything. "I want you to know that whatever you're standing your ground about, I support you. Your parents did something similar to me years ago, made financial decisions involving my name without my full consent. I wish I'd had the courage to stand up to them like you're doing." This revelation stunned me. They used your finances without permission, too. Let's just say there was a family investment opportunity that I was included in, without my knowledge, until it was time to contribute my share of the losses. I was younger then, and I paid it to keep the peace. I've regretted it ever since. By the time we ended our call, I felt simultaneously validated and disturbed. This wasn't an isolated incident or a misunderstanding. It was a pattern of behavior that had affected others in the family. The next day, I received a text from Mom Family Dinner this Saturday. "Your attendance is mandatory if you wish to remain part of this family. 7 p.m. sharp." The message's tone made it clear this wasn't a reconciliation dinner but a tribunal. I spent the next 2 days preparing myself, emotionally rehearsing what I would say and trying to anticipate their arguments. When Saturday arrived, I dressed carefully in clothes that made me feel confident but weren't flashy enough to trigger comments about my spending habits. The drive to my parents' house felt like heading to a battlefield. Everyone was already seated at the dining table when I arrived. Mom, Dad, Natalie, and surprisingly Jason. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with the sterling silver butter knife beside my plate. Mom had prepared an elaborate meal, which I recognized as a strategic choice. In our family, her cooking had always been used as both reward and weapon. Special meals for celebrations, cold sandwiches when someone had disappointed her. Now that we're all here, Dad began, after minimal greetings had been exchanged, "It's time to resolve this unfortunate situation. The airline has been holding the tickets pending payment resolution, but they won't do so indefinitely." Mom dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. "I don't understand why you're doing this, Ezra. We've always handled family expenses collectively." "No, we haven't," I said firmly. "You and Dad have always covered your expenses, and each of us kids has covered our own." You've never used my credit card for family purchases before. That's simply not true, Mom insisted. I've made arrangements for family matters many times. Using your card or Dad's, yes. Not mine. Never for something this expensive, and never without explicitly asking first. Natalie jumped in, her voice sharp. Why are you making such a big deal about this? It's just money. If you can't afford it, just say so instead of causing all this drama. The condescension in her tone ignited something in me. Yes, Natalie. I cannot afford nearly $8,000 in unexpected credit card charges. Not all of us have the same financial situation as you and Jason. And yes, it is just money. My money. See how he talks to me. Natalie appealed to our parents. All I said was, "That's enough," Dad interrupted. "This bickering isn't productive. Ezra, your mother, and I are prepared to pay for your ticket if that's what this is about. But we expect you to withdraw the fraud claim immediately. It's causing serious problems." "It's causing problems because it is fraud," I said quietly. "Using someone's credit card without their permission is literally the definition of fraud." Mom gasped as if I'd slapped her. "How dare you accuse me of criminal behavior after everything I've done for you?" The conversation deteriorated from there, with Mom crying, Dad growing increasingly stern, and Natalie making cutting remarks about my career choices and financial management. Jason remained strangely quiet throughout, watching the back and forth with an unreadable expression. Finally, when Mom started listing all the sacrifices she'd made for me since childhood, something inside me snapped. "Stop." My voice cut through her monologue. Everyone at the table froze. I never interrupted my mother. No one did. "This isn't about tickets or money anymore. This is about respect and boundaries. For years, I've let you make me feel inadequate because I chose a career based on passion rather than profit. I've stretched my budget to keep up with family expectations that are completely disconnected from my financial reality. I've nodded and smiled through comments about my hobby of a career and my quaint apartment. I took a breath, surprised by my own steadiness. But taking my credit card information without my knowledge and charging thousands of dollars to it crosses a line that should never be crossed. It was wrong. It was possibly illegal, and I won't pretend otherwise to make everyone comfortable. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's face had gone pale. Dad's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. Natalie looked stunned, as if she'd never considered I might have a breaking point. If being part of this family means having no financial boundaries, then maybe I need to reconsider what family means to me. I concluded, standing up from my barely touched meal. "You don't mean that?" Mom whispered, genuine fear replacing the manufactured distress of earlier. "Right now I do," I replied, heading for the door. "I think we all need some time to think about what kind of relationship we want going forward." I walked out to my car, hands shaking, but mind clearer than it had been in years. As I pulled away from the house I'd grown up in, the weight of possibly losing my family hit me full force. But underneath the grief was something unexpected, a sense of having finally stood up for myself, no matter the consequences. 2 days after the disastrous family dinner, I was working at my desk when a knock came at my apartment door. I tensed immediately, expecting another confrontation with Dad, or perhaps Mom taking her turn to pressure me in person. When I looked through the peephole and saw Jason standing there, I was genuinely surprised. I opened the door cautiously. "Jason." My brother stood in the hallway, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. His normally perfectly styled hair was unstyled, and he wore jeans and a plain t-shirt rather than his usual designer clothes. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice lacking its usual confidence. I stepped aside, curious about what new approach my family had sent him to try. Jason entered and glanced around my apartment with interest rather than the thinly veiled condescension I was used to seeing from family members. "Nice place. I like what you have done with it." The unexpected compliment threw me off guard. "Thanks. What brings you here, Jason?" He sat down on my couch without waiting for an invitation. Something that would have irritated me from anyone else. but somehow seemed vulnerable coming from him. "We need to talk about what is happening with the family," he said, "but not in the way you are probably expecting." I sat in the armchair across from him, maintaining some distance. "I am not changing my position about the credit card charges." "I know, and you should not." His direct response stunned me into silence. Jason continued, "What Mom did was wrong. What all of them are doing to pressure you is wrong. And there is something you need to know about our family finances." Jason ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I had never seen from my always composed brother. "Mom and Dad are broke, Ezra." I stared at him, certain I had misheard. "What are you talking about?" "They live in a 5,000 square foot house. They drive luxury cars. They take expensive vacations." "Yes, and it is all built on debt and appearances," Jason replied, leaning forward. "Dad's company has been struggling for years. The recession hit his commercial properties hard, and he never really recovered. Rather than scaling back their lifestyle, they have been keeping up appearances by accumulating massive debt." This revelation was so unexpected that I did not know how to process it. "How do you know this? And why would they book an expensive vacation to Hawaii if they are in financial trouble?" "I know because I have been helping Dad manage the business books for the past 2 years," Jason admitted. "As for why they would still plan expensive vacations, image, status. Mom's desperate need to maintain the illusion that everything is fine. The more their actual finances crumble, the more important keeping up appearances becomes to them." "And the credit card situation?" I asked, beginning to see where this was heading. Jason sighed heavily. "Mom has been playing a shell game with family finances for years, moving debt around, opening new credit accounts, borrowing from various family members. When she said she had everyone's credit card information for family expenses, she was not entirely lying. She has mine, she has Natalie's, but we have much higher limits and have been allowing it because we know the situation." "But I never gave her mine," I insisted. "No, and that is why what she did crosses a line. My guess is she got your information from a previous purchase where you let her use your card, or maybe from that joint gift we all went in on for Grandma's birthday last year. When her usual cards were maxed out or too close to their limits to book all the tickets at once, she used yours without thinking about it." The pieces were starting to fit together, but it still felt surreal. Does Natalie know all this? She knows some of it. She knows things are tight for them, but I do not think she understands the full extent. Mom and Natalie have always been similar. Appearances matter most. So Natalie goes along with Mom's financial creativity because it maintains the family image she also values. I processed this information slowly. "Why are you telling me this now? Why not before?" Jason looked genuinely remorseful. "Because I was a coward. Because it was easier to let you be the family outsider than to challenge the whole system. Because honestly, I benefited from being the golden child." He paused. "And because watching you stand your ground at that dinner made me realize how wrong this all is." Over the next hour, Jason revealed more details about our parents' financial situation. Dad's company had been operating at a loss for 3 years. Their house had 2 mortgages against it. Mom had credit card debt approaching 6 figures spread across numerous cards. They had even borrowed against their life insurance policies. "The Hawaii vacation," Jason explained. "It is not just for family togetherness. Dad is hoping to meet with some potential Japanese investors who will be at the same resort. The whole trip is a desperate attempt to secure new business while maintaining the appearance of success." "And the business class tickets?" I asked. "Pure image. Mom believes successful people fly business class. Therefore, we must fly business class to appear successful, therefore attract success." Her logic is circular, but unshakable. By the time Jason finished explaining, my anger had transformed into something more complicated, a mixture of vindication, concern, and sadness for my family trapped in a prison of their own making. "What do we do with this information?" I finally asked. Jason straightened his shoulders. I think it is time for a real family intervention. Not the kind they tried to stage for you, but an honest conversation about finances, boundaries, and the future. Mom and Dad need help, but not the kind where we all silently enable their financial self-destruction. They need actual financial restructuring and probably therapy about their relationship with money and status. For the first time in our adult lives, Jason and I were truly on the same side. We spent the rest of the evening developing a plan to approach our parents. Jason would compile documentation of their financial situation, with figures concrete enough that they could not be waved away or minimized. I would research financial advisors who specialized in debt management and wealth rehabilitation. We also reached out to Aunt Caroline, who immediately agreed to be part of the intervention. Her experience as both a family member and someone who had dealt with similar boundary violations from my parents made her an ideal ally. The most difficult call was to Natalie. Jason took the lead on this conversation, carefully explaining enough of the situation to get her attention without overwhelming her with details that might send her straight to Mom in alarm. To our surprise, once Natalie understood the seriousness of the situation, she agreed to meet with us before we approached our parents. I knew things were strained with Dad's business, she admitted during our meeting at my apartment 2 days later. But I had no idea it was this bad. Mom always makes it seem like everything is fine. That is the problem, I explained. Nothing about this is fine, but we have all been trained since childhood to maintain the illusion that it is. Together, the three of us children, united for perhaps the first time in our adult lives, crafted a strategy to help our parents face reality while also establishing clear financial boundaries for ourselves. Jason, with his business background, would address the practical financial aspects. Natalie would focus on the social and emotional adjustments needed, and I would be the one to address the boundary violations and need for transparency going forward. Aunt Caroline offered her home as neutral territory for the intervention, giving us a space where our parents would not have the home field advantage and could not easily walk away from the conversation. Armed with documentation, professional referrals, and a united front, we were as prepared as we could be for what promised to be one of the most difficult family meetings of our lives. The intervention took place on a Sunday afternoon at Aunt Caroline's Victorian home in Cambridge. Her living room, with its mismatched comfortable furniture and walls lined with bookshelves, created an atmosphere that was both neutral and calming, exactly what we needed for the difficult conversation ahead. Mom and Dad arrived, thinking they were there for a casual family get-together. The moment they walked in and saw all of us sitting formally in the living room with folders of documents on the coffee table, Mom's social smile faltered. "What is this?" Dad asked, his voice immediately defensive as he recognized the setup. Aunt Caroline stepped forward, taking on the role of moderator. "Albert, Diana, please sit down. Your children and I need to have an important conversation with you." "If this is about the Hawaii tickets again," Mom began, but Jason gently interrupted. "It is about much more than the tickets, Mom. Please just listen to what we have to say before responding." Something in Jason's tone, my golden child brother, who had never before challenged our parents, made them comply. They sat stiffly on the love seat, looking like defendants awaiting sentencing. Jason started with the financial overview, clinically presenting the documents he had compiled. "Dad, these are the current balance sheets for your company, showing 3 consecutive years of losses. These are the mortgage statements for the house, showing the second line of credit you took out last year. And these," he laid out a spreadsheet, "are the combined credit card statements, showing nearly $100,000 in revolving debt across 8 different cards." Dad's face had gone pale, while Mom looked as though she might be sick. Neither interrupted. "You are maintaining a lifestyle that exceeds your current income by approximately 30% each month," Jason continued. "At the current rate, even if you liquidated all non-essential assets, you would be insolvent within 18 months. How dare you go through our private financial information?" Dad finally sputtered, but with notably less force than his usual bluster. "I have been helping you manage the company books for 2 years," Dad Jason replied calmly. I already had access to most of this information. The rest was necessary to compile in order to help you. Natalie spoke next, addressing the social and emotional aspects. Mom, Dad, we understand how important your social standing and appearances are to you. But the way you are trying to maintain them is unsustainable and destroying our family from within. We are not destroying anything, Mom protested, finding her voice. We have built this family and its reputation through decades of hard work and careful social management. And we appreciate that, Natalie said, using the gentle but firm voice she typically reserved for difficult clients. But that reputation is now being maintained through deception, financial deception, social deception, and even deception within our own family. Then it was my turn. I took a deep breath and met my parents' eyes directly. When you used my credit card without permission to buy those tickets, it was a violation of my financial boundaries and my trust. But it was also a symptom of a much bigger problem, one that affects all of us. This family has been operating under unspoken rules about money, success, and image that are hurting everyone, especially you two. Mom started to object, but I continued with a gentleness that surprised even me. I know you believed you were doing the right thing for the family. I know maintaining our family image feels like your responsibility, but it has gone too far, and it is time for honesty, with yourselves, with each other, and with us. What followed was one of the most raw and honest conversations our family had ever experienced. At first, Mom tried to minimize the situation, insisting that all successful families had temporary cash flow issues. Dad attempted to frame it as a short-term business setback that would resolve itself with the next big deal. But faced with the concrete evidence and our united front, those deflections eventually gave way to truth. Dad admitted that his business had been struggling for years, and he had been too proud to scale back their lifestyle or ask for help. Mom broke down when she acknowledged how her need to maintain perfect appearances had driven many of the financial decisions that had dug them deeper into debt. I just wanted everyone to be proud of our family, she said through tears. I wanted to give you children the best of everything. What we needed was honesty and realistic expectations, Jason replied, not the pressure to maintain an unsustainable image. The conversation was painful but necessary. There were moments of defensiveness, tears, and even anger. But unlike our previous family conflicts that devolved into guilt trips and emotional manipulation, this one stayed focused on solutions because we refused to be derailed. We presented them with a comprehensive plan. First, they would meet with a financial advisor who specialized in debt restructuring for high net worth individuals facing insolvency. Second, they would begin working with a therapist who specialized in financial therapy to address the emotional and psychological aspects of their relationship with money and status. Third, and perhaps most importantly, they would commit to complete financial transparency with each other and with us going forward. And what about Hawaii, Mom? Asked in a small voice, the vacation plans seeming almost trivial now in the context of their larger financial issues. The Hawaii trip cannot happen as planned, Jason said firmly. Not with business class flights and a luxury resort. It is exactly the kind of spending that got you into this situation. Mom's face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought we were about to witness another emotional manipulation. Instead, something unexpected happened. You are right, she said quietly. It was irresponsible to plan it. That simple acknowledgement of reality felt like a breakthrough. Dad reached over and took Mom's hand in a gesture of solidarity I had rarely seen between them. What your mother and I have done is put tremendous pressure on all of you to maintain appearances that we ourselves could not sustain, Dad said. Especially you, Ezra. We dismissed your career choices because they did not fit our image of success, when in truth, you have been more financially responsible than we have been. The validation I had sought for years came in a context I never could have anticipated. It did not erase the hurt of past dismissals, but it opened a door to a new kind of relationship. We ended the intervention with clear next steps and a commitment from our parents to begin the difficult work of financial restructuring. The credit card dispute would remain in place, a boundary that needed to be respected, but I offered to help them find an affordable alternative for the meeting with the potential Japanese investors that did not involve an elaborate family vacation. As we prepared to leave Aunt Caroline's house, Mom pulled me aside. "I am truly sorry about taking your credit card information, Ezra. It was wrong, and I will never do anything like that again." It was the first genuine apology I could remember receiving from her without qualifications or subtle blame shifting. "Thank you for saying that, Mom. It means a lot." The road ahead would be long and undoubtedly difficult. Unwinding decades of financial mismanagement and unhealthy attitudes about money would not happen overnight. But as we parted ways that evening, there was a sense of cautious hope that perhaps from this crisis could emerge a healthier, more honest family dynamic. 6 months after our family intervention, I sat at an outdoor cafe in Boston, waiting for my parents to arrive for our monthly check-in lunch. These meetings had become part of our new family dynamic, an opportunity to touch base openly about finances and relationships without the pretense that had defined our interactions for so long. As I sipped my coffee, I reflected on how much had changed. My parents had sold their oversized Brookline house and moved into a comfortable but modest condominium. The 3 luxury cars had been replaced by a single practical vehicle. Dad had restructured his business with Jason's help, focusing on smaller, more stable properties rather than risky, high-end developments. Mom had found a part-time job at an art gallery, something she genuinely enjoyed, that also provided a social outlet as she adjusted to their new lifestyle. The financial advisor we had connected them with had created a manageable debt repayment plan that would take years, but was feasible if they maintained their new scaled-back lifestyle. More surprisingly, both my parents had committed to weekly sessions with their financial therapist, working through the emotional attachments to wealth and status that had driven their destructive patterns. I spotted them walking toward the cafe, and the change in their appearance was still striking. Dad wore casual clothes rather than his formerly obligatory business suit, and Mom's designer accessories had been replaced by simpler classic pieces. But the most noticeable difference was in their demeanor. Both seemed lighter, less burdened by the exhausting work of maintaining appearances. "Sorry we are late," Mom said as they joined me. "We took the subway and misjudged the time." The fact that my mother, who once refused to use public transportation on principle, was now casually mentioning taking the subway spoke volumes about her evolution. "No problem," I assured them. I was just enjoying the sunshine. Over lunch, we discussed their progress, frankly. There had been setbacks, moments when old habits resurfaced, particularly for Mom, who still occasionally struggled with the social adjustments of their new financial reality. But overall, they were adapting with more grace than I would have thought possible. "Your father had dinner with the Whitmores last week," Mom mentioned, referencing longtime family friends who epitomized the wealthy social circle they had once been so desperate to impress. "He told them everything about our situation." 6 months ago, such transparency would have been unthinkable to her. Financial struggles were to be hidden at all costs, never discussed openly, especially with social peers. "Gerald was surprisingly supportive," Dad added. "It turns out they went through something similar after the 2008 financial crisis. They just never talked about it." This revelation seemed to still amaze my parents, the discovery that many in their social circle had faced financial challenges but maintained the same illusion of perfect prosperity that my parents had worked so hard to project. Our conversation shifted to the upcoming holidays. Rather than the elaborate celebrations of previous years, we had all agreed to a simpler gathering at Natalie's apartment, with everyone contributing dishes for a potluck meal. "I am looking forward to it," Mom said sincerely. "Last year was so stressful trying to make everything perfect. I do not think I enjoyed a single moment." My relationship with my sister had also undergone a transformation. Without the pressure to compete for our parents' approval or maintain impossible standards, Natalie and I had discovered we actually enjoyed each other's company. She had recently started dating someone new, a high school music teacher, with a modest income but a passion for his work that reminded her of my approach to graphic design. Jason had perhaps changed the least on the surface. He still worked hard and dressed well, but there was a new authenticity to him. He had begun mentoring young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds, sharing his business knowledge in a way that reflected a shift in his values beyond mere financial success. The disputed credit card charges that had triggered everything had long since been resolved in my favor. The credit card company, having recognized the clear case of unauthorized use, but the ripple effects of that incident continued to reshape our family in ways I never could have predicted. "We have been thinking," Dad said, as we finished our meal, "about taking a family trip next summer." I tensed, slightly, memories of the Hawaii debacle still fresh. "Nothing extravagant," he quickly clarified, noting my reaction. "We thought maybe a long weekend at that lakeside cabin in Vermont that Aunt Caroline mentioned. Everyone pays their own way, of course, and only if it fits in each person's budget." The thoughtfulness of this suggestion, acknowledging our past issues while proposing a genuinely affordable alternative that prioritized time together over appearances, moved me unexpectedly. "That sounds really nice, Dad. I would like that." As we parted ways after lunch, Mom hugged me. A real hug, not the stiff camera-ready embraces of the past. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" I asked. "For having the courage to stand up to us when we were wrong. If you had just gone along with the credit card charges like everyone else always did, we would still be drowning in denial and debt." Walking back to my apartment afterwards, I reflected on everything I had learned through this painful but ultimately transformative experience. First, I had learned that financial boundaries are not selfish, but necessary, both for self-preservation and for the health of relationships. By standing firm when my boundaries were violated, I had not only protected myself, but ultimately helped my family face reality. Second, I had discovered that family loyalty does not mean enabling destructive behaviors or sacrificing your own well-being. True family support sometimes means challenging harmful patterns, even when that challenge is initially met with resistance. Third, I had learned that often what appears to be strength, my parents' seemingly unshakable financial success and social standing, can mask profound vulnerability. Their perfectly curated image had been hiding insecurity and fear all along. Finally, I had come to understand that authentic relationships built on honesty, rather than appearances, are far more fulfilling than the perfectly photographed but emotionally distant connections we had maintained for so many years. The family we were building now was more modest in its trappings, but far richer in substance. We still had work to do, old habits to unlearn, and new skills to develop. But for the first time, we were doing that work together with honesty as our foundation. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? Did it lead to positive change or ongoing conflict? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life lessons about family finances and finding authenticity. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to speak your truth, even when it is difficult.